Good morning and welcome to the 2022 Public Finance Forum, also known as the last best Zoom meeting ever. Thanks for tuning in. While we'd hoped to be together in person here in Washington for our second annual forum, recent events have forced us to pivot, or as my colleague Nikki recently coined, pirouette to a virtual event. But there are many silver linings to this pivot. We have opened up the dialogue to a wider national audience on the Milken Institute live stream, and we've been able to bring in even more great speakers who weren't quite ready to stop wearing sweatpants from home. We've also added several interactive sessions today and tomorrow on the key theme of our event, accelerating innovation that drives outcome-focused leadership. So what is the Public Finance Forum? Our event, launched last year, is designed to rally together cross-sectoral innovators from government, politics, philanthropy, the muni bond sector, and the investment community who are dedicated to scaling up equitable outcomes and innovation in the $4 trillion public finance sector. Essentially the backbone of essential public services like public health that until COVID, many of us took a bit for granted. At this event, and through our Milken Institute program for excellence and equity in public finance, we aim to create an additive center of gravity that can amplify, with partners, the innovative work being done in this space that is ready to scale. Core to this effort, a sharpened focus on equity in all aspects of our work, both in the bond market with over 50,000 big and small bond issuers, and in the intersecting worlds of public policy, technology, and finance. In short, lifting up new leaders, new ideas, and underserved communities is good business and good government. Today's events will feature a series of plenary sessions and deep dive breakouts centered around three key areas of strategic intervention and opportunity that we are working on inside and outside of government. Number one, infrastructure deployment in areas from faster broadband to clean energy to smarter buildings. Second, ESG, not just for the private sector, but for the muni bond sector. And if you don't know what ESG stands for, stick around and you'll find out. And third, a focus on ongoing government innovation and adaptive public-private partnerships that can deliver meaningful outcomes across the wave of change for what many argue is a near permanent era of disruption, change, and opportunity. Before handing over the reins to the intrepid Mike Piwowar for our first panel on just those issues, let me first take the opportunity to offer heartfelt thanks and appreciation to everyone who's come together on this event. First, I want to thank all of the city CFOs, the chief financial officers, who are here participating in the CFO forum that we are holding alongside this event, some of whom you will hear from at our 12:30 plenary, along with White House NEC Director Brian Deese. Next, a big thanks to Team Pirouette, the incredible events team who stage our annual Milken Global event, the 25th anniversary coming up May 1st. Mark your calendars. Shout outs to our speakers and our partners for this event, the Volcker Alliance, the Government Finance Officers Association, the National Association of State Treasurers, Accelerator for America, Results for America, Social Finance, Sorensen Impact, Lincoln Land, the IEDC, the US EDA, and our friends at the Rural Community Assistance Partnership. Deepest gratitude to the insightful members of our Public Finance Advisory Council, led by Lois Scott, Gary Hall, Hector Negroni, and Lynette Kelly, who help guide our program's work and bring such passion to the issues. A huge, huge thank you to my public finance teammates, Rachel Halfacre and Michelle Brito, who organized and brought life to these timely, informative events. And most of all, to Mike Piwowar, who leads our team at our home Center for Financial Markets. Mike, over to you.
Thanks, Dan. As Dan mentioned, my name is Mike Piwowar. I'm the Executive Director of the Milken Institute Center for Financial Markets, which houses the program in Excellence and Equity in Public Finance, led by Dan. I have the pleasure of moderating our first panel, a panel of experts who will discuss key challenges facing the public sector. The last 2 years have highlighted the importance of the public sector for delivering the basic services that undergird a functional society and an equitable economy. Many of our sessions in today's forums will be delving into specific areas of challenge and opportunity, from infrastructure to equity, to ESG, to government innovation, to how the public and private sectors can partner effectively to finance and deliver innovative outcomes. In this opening panel, we will discuss the big trends and cross-currents and challenges that subsequent panels will explore in depth. Our all-star lineup of panelists includes Tammie Arnold, founding partner of Alpha Ledger, Elaine Buckberg, chief economist for General Motors, and Maurice Jones, president and CEO of OneTen. Elaine, let's start with you. As chief economist of General Motors, it's your job to read the data and the tea leaves on where the economy is headed. Each data release gives us important new information about things like the labor market, supply chain, and price levels. And the news is full of speculation about how the federal government's potential fiscal and monetary responses. Please give us your take on how things are looking for the US economy over, say, the next 6 to 12 months.
Mike, thank you, and thanks to the Milken Institute for inviting me to participate today. The US economy has rebounded powerfully from the COVID-19 induced recession. And by the end of last June, it had already topped its pre-COVID level. A lot of economies haven't yet gotten there. I see the economy is having good momentum over this next year, although in the next couple of months, the Omicron wave could slow the pace of progress. Consumer demand's well supported by ample job openings and high household savings, and businesses are rebuilding inventories. So these are solid drivers for growth in 2022. The blue chip forecaster consensus calls for 3.9% GDP growth in 2022. And I think that's achievable even if we have a little slower Q1 because of this infection wave. 3.9% growth is a very strong pace, considering that if you looked at the decade before the pandemic, the average was just over 2%. Now, the job market's the heartbeat of the economy, and the December jobs report signaled good progress in continued labor healing. Unemployment fell to 3.9% in December. It's a dramatic improvement from 14.7% in April of 2020. It's close to the pre-pandemic low of 3.5%. 6.5 million people took jobs in 2021. Slowing job gains today are about labor supply. There are a lot of former workers who remain on the sidelines and they're not looking for work. They're not ready to return because they're worried about COVID, or they have childcare issues. They're concerned schools will be disrupted. And there's been early retirement. And also importantly, we've seen less workers enter the labor force due to lower immigration. So we've got very intense labor demand, over 10 million jobs posted, about 6 million unemployed workers who are looking for work. Again, we may see slower progress in the January data due to Omicron, but it shouldn't derail the recovery for long. And I think that we'll see continued improvement in the labor market in 2022. Biggest cloud on the horizon today is inflation. And so easing in supply chain bottlenecks is the key to bringing that down. And the rapid run up in consumer prices we've seen the last month is a result of strong demand and broad supply shortages. December's CPI came in yesterday extremely high, 7% on the headline versus December 2020 and 5.5% core inflation, excluding volatile food and energy. On a month-over-month basis, though, which tells us more about inflation momentum, headline CPI came down by a third in December, versus November, thanks to lower food and energy prices, and the core inflation was basically flat. The key to alleviating inflation right now is easing supply bottlenecks, and we're seeing signs of improvement. Freight prices, especially for ocean shipping, are down from record highs, and auto price inflation has been a big contributor, and we're seeing better chip supply in the auto supply chain and better production, and that's going to moderate auto prices. So with improving supply, I expect inflation, especially goods inflation, to ease in the second half. Consensus forecast calls for 4.6% year over year, but that involves bringing inflation under 3% before the end of the year. I'm mindful of risks this outlook, though. Feedback between prices and wages could slow progress in reducing inflation, and Omicron could slow progress on improving those supply chain bottlenecks the next couple months. So let's talk about monetary policy. This group, as Dan said, is many people are actively involved in bond issuance, and the Fed's adjusting its policies to contain inflation and really ramping up its rhetoric. They signaled in December that they're going to speed up their process of tapering or reducing their monthly bond purchases. That positions them to start raising rates at the March meeting. And the average forecast of the FOMC members is 3 rate hikes of 25 bips for a total of 75 basis points this year. Personally, I think it's more like 100. But higher interest rates should dampen demand, moderate inflation, but not derail economic growth. And even with 100 basis points of increases, we're still looking at interest rates that would be low by historical levels and even relative to immediate pre-COVID. So bottom line, I see very healthy growth this year and inflation moderating, but keep your seatbelt on because the road ahead is still bumpy. The current wave of Omicron infections, while resulting in fewer hospitalizations, is causing a new round of disruptions from widespread worker absenteeism, and that's canceling flights and closing schools and means fewer people to move goods. But with more people increasingly vaccinated, boosted, and previously infected, I think that activity is going to continue to normalize, and we're looking at a year of healthy growth and gradually lower inflation.
Great, thank you, Elaine. So Maurice, let's pick up on that. So inflation and Omicron notwithstanding as potential clouds on the horizon, Elaine paints a picture where overall growth in the United States, there are, but as she points out, solid drivers of economic growth overall. Now, recent events such as the COVID pandemic and the killing of George Floyd have shown a brighter light on social issues and unmet needs for providing more equitable opportunities throughout our economy. These events have sparked an incredible amount of attention on these issues. As someone who's had a long career working on intractable challenges facing underserved communities, I'd like to get your perspective on this particular moment. Is it unique? And how can we maintain the momentum? What are the important next steps?
Yeah, Mike, thanks for having me. Thanks to everybody, and thanks to Milken for this forum. Yeah, you know, it's an interesting question. Is the moment unique? I like to look at it probably through a slightly different lens. What I believe about the moment is that it's a real opportunity. And the reason why I say that is I think there are analogies. So I'll take us back a little bit. You know, the country in 1963, when images of dogs and water hoses being let loose on students and other Black folks in the country were broadcast across television, it really hit home to a lot of people, including at that time folks in the White House, that we had a country that was not what we wanted it to be, that was not one that was a land of opportunity to all, that folks, particularly Black folks in the South who wanted to vote, who wanted to have a cup of coffee at a counter where other white folks were allowed to be served, who wanted to buy clothing from the same counter that other folks were able to buy it from, were not allowed to do so, who wanted to live in communities where housing should have been open to them, were not allowed to do so either legally in the South or de facto by facts and customs and other things in the North. It was a moment that showed the country we were far from the ideal of being a land of opportunity. I think that we are in another moment that's similar, that before COVID, you had a country where the white-Black wealth gap was at least 10 times difference. And in fact, in places like Boston and other cities, much greater, where we have a country where home ownership, one of the key ways in which you build wealth, there's an incredible disparity there where if you look at white families in the country, over 60% of them, in fact, close to 70% of them own homes. That number is somewhere around 40% for Black families. If you look at who has access to regular, ordinary, customary services from banks, you find that less than 50% of Black families are banked, if you will, and that number is much greater than that for white families. This is a moment where I believe the country, or more of the country, is beginning to understand again that we are not where we want to be as a country. We're not as fair as we want to be. We're not the land of opportunity for all in the way that we want to be. There are disparate outcomes, whether we intend them or not, in education, in employment, in other parts of our economy. That the moment that we're in right now is a moment where we are understanding better that we've got more work to do, that the American journey or the American experiment is still one fraught with imperfections. And so it's a chance, it's a new opportunity for us, what I'm seeing, for us to recommit ourselves to becoming the country that we want to become. And so I'm seeing the private sector better understand that. I'm seeing the public sector better understand that. We're seeing signs of it throughout the nonprofit sector. The real key, though, is we have a moment that allows us more clarity, that allows us to do something about it. And the key for us is going to be, how do we use this moment, right? Because we know enough by now to know that time is neutral. Time is not what's going to make us better. It's not what's going to perfect our imperfections. It's how we take this moment where we have more clarity about our imperfections and go to work and do something about it that really has transformative impact. That's how I see the moment, a real opportunity. I'm encouraged because I do see movement in all sectors to use this moment and to use it well. And I want to be a part of it. And so I'm grateful for the chance to talk about it.
Great, thank you, Maurice. Tammie, let me turn to you. So Maurice teed up some, very important social equity issues that we need to address, and there's an important moment in here. You yourself have been, in your long-standing career in institutional asset management and impact investing, you've shown an interest in sustainability issues, which are also at the forefront today. What caused you to select the municipal bond market as your current area of focus? Are there sustainability links to that decision?
Before going into the background on the Muni decision, I'd like to first thank you and the Milken Institute for bringing this impressive group together. It's really a pleasure to be part of the event. As you guessed, Mike, sustainability was a key factor in our decision to focus on municipal funding. In the US, there are more than 50,000 municipal entities operating at multiple different levels to create and maintain essential public infrastructure and services. These include areas like healthcare, education, water, and transportation. These are assets and services that are the foundation of our economy, and they underpin our quality of life. Any successful transition to a more sustainable economy in terms of environmental or social equity considerations will require that the municipal sector deliver on its part of the solution. Take water management as an example. While companies in Silicon Valley may be the ones creating smart water technologies, municipal leaders are the ones ultimately buying and implementing them to improve water provisioning in our communities. They are the actors who actually select and scale sustainable solutions. The decisions municipal leaders make about how to modernize public assets could therefore not be more critical. Their collective actions will have an outsized impact on whether the US successfully transforms its economy to address the widespread disruption we're facing. The stakes are very high. When it comes to funding these projects, however, there are many frictions: limited transparency, information asymmetries, limited access to investors, and operational inefficiencies. Fortunately, a digital bond market has the potential to transform municipal funding and the fixed income market more broadly. That said, the underlying innovations it depends on are not necessarily new. Digital platforms have been in place for the last 20 years and have already transformed our lives in numerous ways. Take secondary market trading. Investors have access to a wide set of digital solutions for transaction execution, ranging from large institutional platforms to those focused on individual investors. Yet when it comes to municipal financing and the origination process in particular, participants still rely on a funding system that is over a century old. Likewise, distributed ledger technology seems new, but it's been around for a while. Cryptocurrencies managed on public blockchains take the spotlight, but behind the scenes, numerous use cases for both public and private distributed ledger technology have been tried and tested. It's no longer a question of if financial markets will move to blockchain infrastructure, but how quickly. So to sum it up, there is an urgent need to modernize our economy in response to the disruptions we're facing from both a climate and social equity perspective. Much of the work is taking place at the state and local level. This means public leaders need easy access to competitive funding. While the existing system has gotten us to where we are today, it is not equipped to get us where we need to go. We need all municipal entities and investors across the country to work together to bring positive impact projects to life. A digital bond market can create the space for this collaboration to take place.
Great, thank you, Tammie. Elaine, I'm going to pick up on those sustainability threads that Tammie mentioned. To say that GM is making a big bet on electrification is an understatement. GM's committed to offering 30 new electric vehicles globally by 2025, and it sees an all-electric future. And it's not just GM, all your competitors are heading in the same direction. Looking into the future, say 5-10 years from now, how will the EV revolution reshape our economy? How will it affect manufacturing and jobs?
Great question. So first of all, you've got it right. We're betting big. We see our future as all electric, and we believe in a world of zero emissions driven by battery electric technology. So let's first talk about that movement to EV and then talk about jobs. So in early 2021, we laid out our aspiration to eliminate tailpipe emissions from new light-duty vehicles by 2035. And by leveraging battery electric vehicles and other zero emissions technology, we plan to offer an EV for every customer, including crossovers, SUVs, trucks, sedans, across a range of price points. As you mentioned, we're already planning 30 new EVs globally by 2025. And at the White House this summer, we and Ford and Stellantis pledged to target 40 to 50% EVs by 2030. We currently plan to sell more than 1 million EVs globally by mid-decade, and our technology enables us to scale to meet much higher customer demand if the EV market evolves more rapidly. And our market research and third-party research shows that EV interest is steadily and rapidly rising. So surveys by Consumer Reports and Ipsos show 1 in 3 drivers are ready to consider an EV for their next vehicle. 70% are willing to consider an EV in the future. So what does that mean in terms of manufacturing and jobs? I expect that auto plant production will shift over time in line with sales to EVs. The jobs we have today in assembly and our supply chain will increasingly be in EV. But our teams and employees have been transitioning throughout their careers. So we're already successfully transitioning teams to transfer their skills and passions from one vehicle category or program to another, And they've always done this from one program to another. And many new career paths will be simple, and some will involve taking a new training or stretching in their comfort level somewhat. But it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. We'll be adapting and adding to our existing career pathing, reskilling, and education programs. It's our goal to have a role for every employee and individual who wants to be part of our journey.
Great, thanks, Elaine. Maurice, before I come to you, I want to go back to Elaine and ask you, so how should the public sector be preparing for this revolution, this EV revolution?
Great question. So first of all, at the federal level, approving the EV tax credit that's in the Build Back Better bill will be critical to accelerating EV adoption, both by compressing that price differential that currently exists between EV and internal combustion engine or ICE vehicles, and therefore driving an earlier tipping point in sales. And the $7.5 billion for EV infrastructure that was approved in the Infrastructure and Jobs Act or bipartisan infrastructure bill was a huge step forward in laying the groundwork for widespread adoption. The Biden administration wants that to fund 500,000 new chargers by 2030. Now, home charging and workplace charging are going to be very important, but for those who can't charge at home or can't always charge at work, they're going to need charging in the community. So McKinsey estimates that 64% of EV charging will be done at home, 11% at work, 12% on the highway, 14% at public community chargers. So rolling out charging along the highway corridor is particularly essential. It's also important to have those chargers in the community for people, for example, who live in apartments and won't be able to install home charging. And the USA DOT is very focused on highway charging as an EV enabler. But it's the states and municipalities who are represented here today who are the ones who are going to execute that vision of highway and community charging. So they're doing so, and moving on it swiftly is essential to achieving that zero emissions future.
Great, thanks. Maurice, so Elaine mentioned that workforce development is going to be very important in the EV revolution and through some of the other changes we're going to see in the economy. It's clear that you're going big in this area. Tell us about OneTen, your new venture to employ 1 million African Americans in the next 10 years. Give us your theory of change, your plan. How can the public and private sectors engage with you in this new venture?
Yeah, it is a new adventure, the way you described it, Mike. Yeah, so look, OneTen is a coalition now of over 60 companies. I'm grateful to say that GM is one across the country who have committed to the North Star of hiring, promoting, and advancing 1 million Black talent who don't have four-year degrees into family-sustaining careers and jobs over the next 10 years. Look, let me give you a couple of data points on this. If you look across our country right now at jobs that pay $60,000 and above, what you'll see is on paper, 79% or so require a four-year degree as a entry point gateway. If you look at jobs that pay $40,000 and above across the country, what you'll see is on paper, 71% of them require that you have a four-year degree if you want to compete. And yet, when you look at the US workforce, if you look at Black talent in the workforce today, ages 25 and above, 76% of us do not yet have a four-year degree. And oh, by the way, that number is 66% of the US workforce, period. We have, this is going back to what I was alluding to, we have in this country a credential that is literally a barrier to people being able to earn their way into the middle class. And what the OneTen coalition is saying is, no. We need to focus on skills. What are the skills that one needs on day one to do a job? What are the skills that one will need in year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5? And what are the multiple ways through which one can come about achieving or garnering or gaining those skills. Higher ed, a 4-year degree may be one way, but it can't be the only way into the middle class in America. Otherwise, you're setting up two Americas, those who can afford 4-year schools and those who cannot, and those who need it to enter a journey. And so the OneTen Coalition has committed to removing this focus on a credential as a gateway to earning your way into the middle class, and focusing on skills and the way in which you can come about those skills. We need jobs from the private sector. We need organizations that are in the business of equipping people to be ready to do those jobs well. Boot camps and 2-year institutions and community colleges and the continuing education components of 4-year schools, military transition programs, the whole works. We need talent that we want to get off the sideline, and we need the wraparound supports. We need coaching and mentors and transportation assistance and childcare and the like. This is a job of building and scaling an ecosystem in which the public sector and the private sector have to work together to do it at the scale that we're trying to do it at. What we're suggesting is, if we fix this issue for Black talent, given that 66% of all workers are in the same situation, we're going to make the US workforce more inclusive and more diverse and better than we are today. And we're going to get talent that's right now on the sideline into our workplaces to help us grow. That's our theory of change. And there's no question about it. The private sector and the public sector have to be working together to make this work. And that's our invitation.
Great, thank you. And we have a couple minutes left. Tammie, I want to return to you. You had mentioned it's not a question of if, but when digital ledger technology and blockchain is going to be making change in the municipal bond market. Tell us about Alpha Ledger and how you think blockchain will drive disruption, democratization, better data, and outcomes in the muni markets.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Alpha Ledger is indeed bringing blockchain to munis, and I can explain what that actually means and why it's relevant for us in this session. We began Alpha Ledger in 2019 with the mission to make fixed income investing transparent and accessible to everyone. We started with a focus on the origination of municipal debt for the reasons I outlined earlier. We also started with a blank sheet of paper to reimagine municipal funding using the technologies available to us now. But before going into our approach, I'd like to first revisit briefly the legacy system for municipal funding. For the past century, banks have intermediated the process from start to finish, from origination to maturity of the asset. This system has become time-consuming, costly, and can be prone to errors, but it's one we trust based on its familiarity and its integration with the legal and regulatory systems. We've accepted it as the best we can do. But today it's possible to source funding not just through relationships of any one bank or group of banks, but rather directly across the entire financial community. It's also possible to manage legal documentation and financial transactions digitally through encryption technologies. These are just two features of the digital asset bond market, which Alpha Ledger is creating in the form of a transparent platform for the direct origination of digital municipal debt. Via Alpha Ledger's platform, municipal entities will no longer be limited to a handful of banks for origination. The aim is to remove market frictions so that just about anyone, anywhere, can participate, democratizing the market. By creating digital assets at origination, it's also possible to unlock value for market participants across multiple fronts. Data becomes transparent and accessible, fractionalization becomes possible, and duplicate records become a thing of the past. Altogether, this modern funding system can help support better outcomes through cost compression, improved data transparency, and broader investor access. The digital asset bond market is not a theoretical concept. It's in operation today in its initial phase, which is in the muni loan market. Thanks to the engagement of leaders such as Tobias Reed and Jacqueline Knights from the Oregon State Treasury and David Albrecht from the Special Districts Association of Oregon, along with many others, Alpha Ledger is the first firm in the country to have recorded digital municipal assets on blockchain, supporting critical projects across Washington, Oregon, and California. It's an exciting time, and we look forward to working with many more municipalities in the months and years ahead.
Thanks, Tammie. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I want to thank all of our wonderful speakers, Tammie Arnold, Elaine Buckberg, and Maurice Jones. Thank you all for sharing your insights on the key challenges and opportunities for the public sector. This discussion sets up a number of important topics for the rest of our panels to explore in depth. Our next panel on building community wealth will start in just a few minutes.